There's really two main companies that do SSF fiber, TechLogix, Clearline.
Do you know how long it's been around?
4 or 5 years. But it's a patent. And here's I would expect you're going to see more and more company, because it's not like we build the polymer. Basically, it's a design patent where you take the polymer, you put it on the glass. It's Corning glass in here. But then you wrap it with that polymer. The reason that a lot of cable companies, fiber cable companies haven't done this is, one, it costs money to take that polymer and put it on. This glass is going to cost a little bit more. Not crazy amounts more, right? But it's going to cost a little more than traditional fiber. But the other part is, most fiber companies make money off of classes like this and certifications. They charge, if you go and get a Corning certification, you're in it for several $1,000s. You're in it for a lot of training. You don't really need that with this type of cable. So, yeah, but it will say, if it's an SSF grade fiber, it will say that on the jacket. Or you could just like bend it and see what happens. Yeah. Yeah.
Talking about being on the cable, the OM1 and OM2, is that also on the cable?
Yeah, but the thing is too, if it's aqua, it's going to be OM2, OM3, OM4. OM1 was orange.
How about a dark gray?
Dark gray is usually a direct burial jacket. It's an outdoor rating jacket, and inside there you will see a color coding, but even on that dark gray, you'll have a rating on it. Usually, and if it's a dark gray, it's a single mode, because that means you're doing a longer haul, it's got armoring. Okay. Yep. But we actually have a one-pager cheat sheet that kind of tells you all this stuff, what to look for and ratings and all that, so I'm happy to send that out. All right? Make sense? All right, just a couple more slides, we'll wrap up here. Just real quickly, I want to tell you there's 2 different ways you can build electronics. Be cognizant of this, because it really changes how you use them. So it goes back to what I was talking about. I mean, these are basically like twisted pair extenders just made for fiber, right? This is what makes your fiber usable now. The 2 ways that these things get built. One way is with, and I'll pass these around, one way is with what's known as an onboard connection. So like this guy. The fiber connections are physically on the circuit board, okay? Versus this guy, the fiber optic connection is a module that you can pop in and out. Now when you have a module that you can pop in and out, the pro to that is I can adapt this product to different infrastructures. I can take this multi-mode module, pop it out, pop in a single mode module for like 30 bucks, and now my unit just went from going 1,000 feet to 12 miles, okay? So boxes like this allow you to do that. Here's the catch. This fiber module, this SFP module, it's a network module. Network modules max out at 10 gig. So if you have a signal that's bigger than 10 gig, I have to compress it to run through this network module. I get the flexibility of different infrastructures and different distances, and we make boxes that'll run through network switches, and it'll do all of that kind of stuff. But network switches, network equipment, maxes for the most part at 10 gig, okay? Whereas these guys don't have any choke point. There's no network module in line. These guys will max out at 1,000 feet. You can only go 1,000 feet. More than enough for most installations, but it's fully uncompressed. This is the technology when we start to talk about like 48 gig 8K. This is the technology that allows you to do that stuff, because we're not running through network modules. There is no choke point. There is no downsampling of those signals. We build products in both ways. So it really depends on what you're trying to do. I would have thought, if you asked me a year ago, what's the most popular units out there? I would have thought that it would be the fully uncompressed. Folks are doing a theater, and I tell anybody who's in residential and does like projectors, I'm like, if you got a client that's putting in a $15,000 projector in their home theater, why wouldn't they want uncompressed signal? You spending that much money on a home theater, put in fully uncompressed equipment. We don't see it. We actually see, especially right now, a lot of people are opting to go with a compressed technology because it's less expensive, because they're getting ready for 8K. They're like, I just want something. It still does 18 gig 4K 60 444. It just compresses the color space. I'm okay with that, because a year from now I'm going back on site and I'm selling them the new 8K projectors. That's what we're seeing. I don't know that there's a right or a wrong answer. It's just what we're seeing. Okay?
What's the general pricing?
Yeah, so general pricing, extenders like this start at about $350 a set. $350 to $375 a set.
Doesn't matter which type.
No, that's well, you have different models. So that's going to be a 4K 30, a little stick style, does HDMI, bidirectional communication. When you start stepping into the 18 gig with control, around $450. When you get into the fully uncompressed, like audio processing and everything, you're talking like, I want to say $750 a set. And then when you get into the fully AV over IP, I'll show you a slide on that. So you can do a whole house and run all of your high def, equipment over the network. Those boxes are, you're getting in $1,200 a box. So it depends on what you're looking to do, but fiber optic extenders start at about $350. Okay. Fiber optic extenders come in a couple of different varieties. So this slide, we've talked about this. This is still new to a lot of folks. You can get these HDMI only versions. You can get versions where they have control. So it's just like your twisted pair extenders. The only difference, or the only disadvantage, I should say, between a fiber extender and a twisted pair extender is you just can't power the units remotely. You can't send the power over the cable. Remember, fiber does not transmit power. So these boxes get powered on both ends. Like the little guys though, people are gonna power those usually through the USB port on the actual display. So that tends to be fairly common.
What's the power supply look like? Is it a wall wart?
Yeah, most of these are wall wart. They're not the big line lump. They're a real little head, and then that head you can, depending on the model, you can also use just a regular USB cable. So you have some options on them. Yep. You can get fiber matrices. These exist. You don't tend to see as many of them unless you're going into like a lot of really big enterprise type applications, but even like casinos, big commercial applications, they don't tend to use fiber matrices anymore. You're seeing more AV over IP distribution. AV over IP, anybody who's familiar with like Just Add Power, there's a lot of companies that do AV over IP, right? Most companies that do this are in the Cat 5 world, twisted pair world, copper world. These are all fiber-based products. The advantages to going with a fiber-based system is you got a fiber pipeline. So that means you can do 4K 60, 444 HDR. Seamless switching, 0 frame rate latency. Anytime you're doing like a live environment, auditorium, church, stadium, anywhere there's somebody who's recording live video and it's going into a projector, you can't have latency. Fiber-based systems have 0 frame rate latency. So that's where you see the big projects tend to get the fiber AV over IP systems, but you pay for it. It's a little misleading because in most copper AV over IP installations, you have to have segregated data network and then video network, okay? The two don't blend. In the fiber world, because you have the bandwidth, the fiber equipment's actually made to run over the top of a data network, and it has 0 impact on data traffic. So like these boxes, for example, if you look at these IP boxes, these will do all your video switching, your video scaling, all your control to and from the displays in the rack. But a big feature here, these also serve as your access points. So this has all your network capability built in. You can give every room that has a display, you can also give it a network connection all through the one cable. So when you start to look at the cost of putting in multiple networks, when you start to look at the cost of, 2 different systems, the price does actually come down quite a bit on technology like this.
What's a box like that?
These are about $1,200. Yep. About $1,200. Where we see boxes like this go a lot are where
I gotta buy 9.
yeah, where you see boxes like this going are very often when somebody's got like guest house and they want to run everything from one property to the next. Casinos live on boxes like that because in these casino environments, again, long cable runs, but they also, if there's any latency, you get fined, right? They want high def, but there can't be latency. So
Those are 10 gig RJ45?
10 gig SFP modules. Yeah, so these boxes are also smart enough to say, okay, I got one 18 gig channel. I'm going to take that 18 gig, I'm going to compress it, but then I got a bunch of 720p in the same system. It can handle all that. It'll scale where it needs to scale. It'll compress where it needs to compress. The system does all of that stuff. Yeah.
And you run IP repeaters at the same time.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's all built in. So you can run control to and from. These systems like this work with any third-party control system. Yeah, so, because realistically, you can use iPad to control something like this. Nobody does. They'll have like a universal remote in each room, or they'll have a central control system. You do whatever you want with it. I mean, it's a full network-based system.
So what's the general pricing of one of those switches?
It depends on what switch manufacturer you like. We see a lot of like Edge Core seems to be one that's popping up. 48 ports are $4,800. So about $100 a port.
You guys come over at Marketech?
Marketech?
Yeah.
Not a ton. Yeah. I will tell you, a big part of what we do at TechLogix, we engineer all of this stuff. So if you're going to call us up, right, you're going to come to us, you're going to call us and say, look, this is what I want to do. What switch do I use? How do I set all this stuff up? That's what our team does. And then we're going to hand you this, basically bill of materials and say, here's what we recommend you do. You're not comfortable buying the network switch? We will get you the network switch. We don't build network switches. That's not our game. I'm not going to build a big network switch for you. But we'll get it for you. We'll just pass it on, pass the cost on. We don't even mark that stuff up. Here you go. Here's your system in a box. Go nuts. And then, you come buy it here and you're all set. Yeah.
Is there a more affordable option for doing HDMI and?
Realistically, most of the time a copper-based system is going to work fine for you, especially today. It's going to be more cost effective. It's going to do what you need it to do. You still want to pull that fiber line because 3 years from now, you may want to be using those fiber lines.
Stuff's going to come down.
Oh yeah. All of this stuff, I mean, you couldn't buy cleavers and termination kits for under a couple grand 2 years ago. $500 now.
Yeah, I looked at it.
Yeah.
You say 500, that's huge.
That's the whole kit.
Huge.
Yeah. Stuff will come down, okay? This is for the big projects right now. This is for the real sensitive projects. This is for the projects that can't have any downtime. But I'm not going to tell you this is going to be for your regular sports bars and your regular homes. It's just, it's not real. It'll do it, but you're going to pay extra money for it.
What if you ran duplex and then you ran your HDMI and IR over one fiber and then ran your data over the other fiber?
Yeah, and that's why I tell people you're not abandoning Cat 5 yet.
Right.
Cat 6, it's still pulling it, still use it. But you need those fiber runs. They're going to give you your bandwidth. You will be using those, in the next 12 months, next 24 months. You're going to need it. And the other thing is when you're talking to the homeowners, again, we have a whole class on just how to sell fiber, right? Property values. What do you think when somebody's going in and you're going to go sell your home in a couple of years and you got fiber to the home and they're like, okay, but you have no way to connect any of this stuff. Because everything's going, it's got to go fiber. We don't have a choice. We need the bandwidth out of it now.
Anybody seen houses getting fiber dropped in them yet?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, I'm across the river, I was saying.
No Fallon, AT&T's test network, so no Fallon.
And if you think back even a year ago,
They've been doing it for like 8 years.
actually this part of the country was ahead of most of the rest of the country. Kansas City market, St. Louis, but it is moving so fast right now. You're seeing fiber getting dropped everywhere. Yeah.
Question for you. Now, as far as so you can use basically any network, regular network switch on this as long as it supports 10 gig, correct?
No. Your switch has to have a backplane that can support all that bandwidth. So that's part of what we're going to do is we're going to tell you switches that have enough bandwidth capability in the backplane, and you got to have basically a layer 3 switching.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, my question would be if you wanted to have a 24-port switch over here and a 24-port, will it support doing it? Does it do like a multicast where you can have a 10 gig link between the two and still push it to all the devices?
All day long.
Okay, so you
That's-
wouldn't need like a 100 gig link between the two switches.
No, in fact, well, you gotta look at your backplane and how much bandwidth. But these fiber ports, you can stack your switches and you don't have a bandwidth problem because the processing inside of these guys allow you to tweak all of that. I will tell you the other thing that often we see are hybrid systems where you will have this, but then you will also have a copper-based switch that's doing something else. Very often guys will run copper-based switches right off of these guys too.
So you can take from your main fiber switch to one of these devices and then break off of that for copper? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, it's all integrated.
Yeah, but in between, like, say if I had 10 devices on this switch and 10 devices on this switch, I could link those two switches with one 10 gig?
Correct.
Okay.
Provided your backplane is going to support it. And that's just a matter, that's why we have an engineering team that looks at it and says, okay, what are you trying to do? Let's look at it. They do a quick little math calculation. And you can do the math calculation yourself. It's in all the manuals and everything. But most people don't. They just call us up and say, here's what I'm trying to do. Will it work? Here's how you do it.
Do you know if by chance like the Ubiquity switches work with them?
We do see a lot of ubiquity. Yeah.
Can you extend your 1,000 feet?
What's that?
You have an extender to extend your 1,000 feet from video?
Oh yeah. Yeah, in fact, these guys too, you can pop out these modules and you can go from your multi-mode at 1,000 up to, what is it, 10,000 feet?
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, these support that.
And you could daisy chain 10 gig switches too to extend it to, correct?
Through those SFP ports. Yeah, and that's the other thing. I mean, we're talking about 10 gig today. There's 100 gig switches out. There's 40 gig switches. We're just waiting on the prices to come down on all this stuff. You know, that's the thing. Again, 2 years ago, if you went out and bought a 48 port 10 gig switch, you're in it for like 20 grand. Today it's 5 grand. Prices are just moving down, and we as an industry, we as manufacturers are trying to take advantage of that. So it's just a timing conversation right now. Pull the cable. if you walk away with nothing else, pull the cable today. Pull the cable. All right. Any other questions for me? Perfect. All right. I'll leave this slide up here for a minute. I'm here if anybody wants to try to terminate the fiber. Unfortunately, there's only one of me, so I'll work with you guys, and I only have one kit to work with you guys since there's only one of me. But I'm here, so we can terminate some fiber.